Na quinta conferência da temporada 2017 do Fronteiras do Pensamento, o economista francês Thomas Piketty falou sobre o avanço da desigualdade no mundo e a globalização. Segundo ele, uma fórmula matemática para definir o que é aceitável ou não em termos de desigualdade nunca será encontrada. Para entender este processo, é possível fazer pesquisas em conjunto com vários países e comparações históricas.
So let me start right away with the first point and on the long-run dynamics of inequality. So here the general lessons from the historical data that have been collecting for a large number of years is that if you look at the experience of Western countries during the 20th century and why and how inequality was reduced over the 20th century, you can see that you have a very dramatic political process where major shocks, wars, depression, revolution played a central role in the reduction of inequality. And in the end, the general conclusion is that political determinants of inequality are probably even more important than pure economic determinants if you want to account for this evolution. And I think there are important lessons to be drawn for other countries. I mean, the conclusion is not that we should wait for other wars or shocks before the reduction of inequality happens. The conclusion is that we should try to do better in the future, and certainly Brazil and other countries should do better than what happened to Europe or North America in the 20th century.
Thomas Piketty ressaltou que a globalização não é a única causa da desigualdade e que o processo não passa apenas pelas questões de redistribuição da renda e criação de alíquotas progressivas de impostos. Nos dias de hoje, também está envolvido um fator de identidade, que seria uma resposta de viés nacionalista à globalização.
Take the extreme case where, because of globalization and the rule of global capital flow and global finance and global trade flows, assume, to make an extreme assumption, that the countries do not control anymore, cannot really choose their degree of redistribution, income tax progressivity, and all they can control is the migration policy, who can enter the country, who does not enter the country. Then you can see that the main issue in political conflict will not so much be about class redistribution, but will be much more defined in terms of identity-based politics, in the sense that the division will be mostly between different groups within the poor. So, for instance, in the US, between the white poor voting for Trump and the black and Latinos voting for the Democratic Party, or in Europe, between groups of the population that are more linked to migration, for instance, from Muslim countries, but not only, and groups of the population who see themselves as less linked, to say the least, with these different cultures. So that in the end, in a way, because you make it impossible to build policy tools and coalitions that can be in the interest of all of the lower income and middle income groups, you will tend to exacerbate division within this group. Now, I think this is partly what is going on, unfortunately, but this is not the end of the story. I think this does not come, this is something, this doesn't come from a deterministic process. In the end, political strategy, political mobilization, political ideology matters, and so this is not an evolution which we should take as given. And in particular, there is nothing in globalization which makes redistribution and egalitarianism technically impossible.